Ayan's life in the city school brought new challenges he had never imagined. Before, the buildings were taller, the classrooms had air conditioners, and everyone wore uniforms that looked perfectly ironed. He missed the dusty smell of his village school and the familiar laughter of his classmates, but he knew he was here for a reason, and he had to make it count. On his first day, he walked into a science lab filled with equipment he had only seen in textbooks: Bunsen burners, microscopes, glass tubes, and jars with floating things inside. A boy named Zion stood next to him and said, "You're from the parallel school, right?" And Ayan nodded, unsure if that was a compliment or a question. Zion grinned and said, "Cool, my cousin is learning from a screen in Theta. He talks about his digital teacher all the time." Ayan smiled and felt a small piece of home return. Over the next few months, Ayan learned quickly. He asked questions, took notes, recorded experiments, and started helping other students with concepts that confused them. Soon, even the city kids began saying, "If you don't get it, ask Ayan, he'll explain it better than the book." And he did, because he had learned not just to memorize, but to understand. He had learned not from chalkboards, but from storytelling, animations, and real-life problems being solved on screen, and so he taught with that same spark. One afternoon, the school principal called Ayan into his office. "There's a special program starting next month," he said. "We'll be connecting with a school in Skardu using the parallel system. We want you to help guide it." And just like that, Ayan became both student and mentor. He would attend his regular classes and then spend an hour a day helping a new group of students in the mountains of Gilgit-Baltistan understand physics through storytelling and examples from village life. The kids in Skardu were shy at first, speaking slowly and softly, but Ayan knew how that felt, so he started every session with a story, sometimes about his buffalo back home that slipped in the rain, to explain friction, sometimes about how he helped his father measure the water pipe, to teach about volume. Slowly, the Skardu students began to open up. One of them, Yusra, started asking tough questions, and soon she was solving problems faster than anyone Ayan had met. When he told his old teacher from the village about it, he said, "Sir, we're not just learning anymore, we're creating learners." And his teacher wiped a tear and said, "That's how you change the world." During the winter break, Ayan returned to his village. Everyone came to meet him. He brought back gadgets, models, books, and videos to share with the school. He even brought a tiny projector which he used to show experiments to a group of 80 students under the stars at night. They watched chemical reactions on the wall of the school and clapped as colors changed and smoke rose. The excitement in their eyes reminded Ayan of his younger self, and he knew this was only the beginning. During a local festival, Ayan set up a booth called the Digital Corner where parents could come watch a sample lesson from the parallel classroom. Some of them had never seen a TV lesson before. They gasped when the teacher addressed students by name and clapped when a quiz was answered correctly. A farmer named Jalil came up to him and said, "I never understood what my daughter meant by the screen, teacher, but now I see it, and it's a miracle." Back at school, Ayan and Zion started a project called Learn Together. They proposed connecting students across schools to create shared labs and co-learning spaces with parallel classrooms. As the link, they received a small grant and began with 3 schools. Soon, kids from the desert of Thar were discussing science projects with students in the snowy hills of Swat. They exchanged experiments, local knowledge, even art and stories, and learning became a bridge across the country. One day, an education expert visited Ayan's school and sat in on a parallel classroom session watching Ayan teach fluid mechanics to students in 4 different locations. He said, "This is not just teaching, this is transformation. Have you ever thought about training teachers?" And that's how Ayan's next chapter began. He started designing short modules for new teachers who were just stepping into the world of digital learning. He taught them how to keep energy high, how to make the screen feel alive, how to connect, even when there's distance. He reminded them, "Every time you look into that camera, remember, you're not talking to a screen, you're talking to a future doctor, a farmer, a poet, a dreamer, someone who needs you to believe in them, even if you can't see them clearly." One of his trainees, a woman named Perveen from Balochistan, shared that she had never used a computer before, but after 3 weeks she was running a parallel classroom for 60 students with confidence and love. And when she received a letter from one of her students saying, "Thank you, miss, I now want to be a scientist like you," she cried and called Ayan, saying, "You were right, it's never just about tech, it's about trust." Meanwhile, Ayan continued his own studies. He began writing papers on how localized examples improved digital learning. He argued that parallel classrooms should not just broadcast from cities, but also feature village teachers, so learning flows both ways, and his idea gained attention. He was invited to speak at an international education summit in Turkey, where he shared his story on a big stage with bright lights and hundreds of listeners. He stood there, a boy from a remote village in Pakistan, wearing a simple white kurta, and said, "I'm not here because I'm the smartest student, I'm here because someone gave me a screen and told me I mattered." And that belief lit a fire that hasn't gone out since. After the talk, dozens of educators from different countries came up to him and said, "How do we start this in our schools?" And Ayan shared his toolkit, his story, and his hope, not just for Pakistan but for the whole world, that every child everywhere should have access to good education, no matter their geography, income, or background. When he returned home, Ayan received a message from Yusra, the girl from Skardu. She had just passed her entrance exam with flying colors and was offered a scholarship at a top university. She said, "I used to think I would be a teacher in my village, now I want to train teachers all over the north like you." And Ayan smiled, because he knew the cycle had begun again. One teacher Becomes 2 become 10 become 100, and suddenly a country starts changing not through magic, but through effort, faith, and a camera pointed in the right direction. The village where it all began had now become a model school with a fully connected digital lab. Students were co-hosting sessions with international peers. Parents were proud. Schools were inspired, and the once dusty building now buzzed with the energy of possibility. Ian continued to teach not for fame or money, but because he believed that education was the most powerful story ever told, and now it was his turn to keep the story going, one chapter at a time, one child at a time, one screen, one heart, one future.